Welcome to the Doom Kitchen. This is not a news show. It's a talk show. We do not give financial, legal, medical, or any kind of advice. We are not responsible for the actions of our listeners. You are responsible for you. If anything offends you, we were only joking. Promise.
Welcome to the Doom Kitchen. This afternoon, I had the privilege of speaking to one of my favorite Twitter follows, Rachel Tobias. You can find her on Twitter at Rachel D. Tobias. It's a great one. Sorry, it's cut short. I was in the middle of a load, and they made me sit there for 4 hours with absolutely nothing happening. But as soon as I get busy, of course, they finish with the load. So they started knocking on my door at the end, and that's why everything gets a little bit awkward. But enjoy the conversation. Thanks, y'all.
I have Rachel Tobias with me. Hello, Rachel. Tell everybody about yourself.
Hi. Hey. Well, first, I'm disappointed because there's no Doom and there's no kitchen. Just right off the bat. But secondly, thank you.
Have you seen it before when I'm in an actual kitchenette? I'm in a Doom tractor trailer at this moment, so there is some Doom. It's all behind me.
You know, it could be like the Bunker podcast or something. We could have gradations eventually. But yeah, thank you for having me. I guess a little about me is I'm an artist. I have a official artist website. I do stand-up comedy. I did stand-up comedy recently at Porkfest. That was cool. We met at Childerberg.
Yep. And I saw your comedy there. And I got some awesome hot sauce.
Yes. So a lot going on, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that.
No, thanks you for coming on. You've been on shows with some of my heroes like Tommy and Pete and Mark Claire, and so since I first heard you on Pete, every single time I see your name on a show, I'm like, that's going to the top of the list. It's getting priority. So because you always have something to say.
Yeah. For good or bad, I guess. But thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of like, people that like to kick the hornet's nest, a lot of shit starters, but in a good way. For sure. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, given our circumstances, I know that you want to look kind of optimistically at things. And, I call this the Doom Kitchen. I'm always throwing Doom out there and everything like that, but really, if you know me, I'm an optimist, and I know that things are gonna get real hairy, but I also look forward to a lot of the cool things, and I think one thing I touched on several episodes ago whenever I was talking to the Drizzle is that we need to relearn what it is to be human, and I think that's about where you are right now.
I guess to break that, some stuff I've been pondering about is how easy it is for the current technocracy to slide into transhumanism. So for instance, we've got Elon Musk taking over Twitter. This is a guy who's promoting Neuralink, right? And it's something that is so gradual and subtle in a way where social media can be used for good, obviously, but trying to condition people to kind of self-report on themselves and to currently express all their thoughts, right? Good or bad, whatever. I like free speech, but just trying to get people to be used to emoting constantly. And I can see why he would take over Twitter to mine data. And the reason that I bring that up pretty much is because there's this, it just sort of default trajectory to getting people more and more into a digital realm more and more kind of disconnected from nature and a more organic space. And that's something that happens so gradually, right? Where more and more, whether
Right.
it's working remotely or whether it's remote classes or virtual classes, and not all of that is obviously bad, but just some of the potential most likely consequence of that is getting people more and more engaged in a extra layer matrixy digital realm, right? So I think it's important when we talk about touching grass, and I know it's a thrown around phrase, it's to really get outside, connect with people, go to Childerberg, go to events, engage in your local community, and not to get so caught up in being terminally online that we get removed from that social engagement.
Yeah, there's a weird kind of thing where people have an online life and a real life, and some people get them confused or they get consumed by one versus the other. And just remember that the internet is a tool, and all of this technology is a tool, and we can use it to go forward, or we can use it to enslave ourselves, and that's what the technocrats want. That's why they want to invade your bodies with this stuff. And the wearables are just as bad. When you start wearing these things to monitor your heart and all the other Apple Watch stuff and everything like that, it's just as bad. They're reporting on you just as much and turning you into a cyborg. And I mean, like, just my phone right here is enough to make me into a cyborg. I forget things that I should just be able to remember off the top of my head. And then I have to go search engine it. And the only reason I didn't commit myself to memorize that is because I know I can look it up in just a second or two. And that's another way of of we're degrading ourselves as human beings in order to become something that's part of the matrix that these guys want us caught into.
Yeah, and I just want to, and I understand the irony of us recording this podcast and using Zoom, but I just want to say I'm not a Luddite, right? I'm not against, because I get that thrown to me sometimes by friends, and I'm like, no, I'm not anti-tech. I just understand the particular conditioning and social engineering that's involved in this. And what frustrates me is every time I try to come up with the solution, organized religion has done it first, which drives me nuts because I sit here and I go, oh, hey, wouldn't it be great if people got off their phones and we had some kind of a community space where we could pay attention and learn to focus and listen, and we could be somewhere that doesn't have screens and this and this. And I'm thinking, I think I'm describing a church. You know what I mean? Yeah, like even at the gym, right? Even somewhere that's good for you, it just constantly has, CNN on or screens everywhere and some kind of horrible, I like some rap music, but generally some kind of music that's just like some pop music. Everything is designed to just dumb you down. Like one of the worst experiences, this is gonna sound so first world and privileged, but just walking into like a CVS or a Walgreens where there's the inevitable Taylor Swift music going on and everything's like cheap and the lights are bright, or even a Walmart,
Yeah.
there's something weird and dystopian about that.
It's
And it's
very
just,
invasive.
yeah, it's just every type of environment built in our current modern world is just designed to get you into a certain state of mind. And that's just really annoying. But you can't unsee it once you see it. Yeah.
Right. And so what this is a fun one that I think I'm just going to start asking this question to every guest. This is one of those that popped into my head, and it's like this is just so obvious. But what do you think people that are prepping? I know that you hang out with some prepping communities. What do you think that they're forgetting? There's like something out there that I think that like you're stocking up on ammo, you're stocking up on hens, you're stocking up on the various things, but people are not remembering that they're not remembering something, or they're not putting an importance on something.
That's a really good question, and you're right. I joined a prepper group in New Jersey, probably 2018 or so. There's sort of two ways that I look at this. One is I feel like I have to glue different groups together to get what I need, because the prepper group in of itself, they've been doing this for a while, and most prepper groups are, I could guess where they lean politically. They're most likely not going to be leftist. However, the people that joined my prepper group didn't do it necessarily because of New World Order, right? You're going to get usually an eclectic mix of people. Sometimes you'll get veterans, sometimes you'll get libertarians, sometimes you'll get just people who love the outdoors in general. So I go there to get a practical application of what to do in certain scenarios. Especially part of the reason I joined it was because of Hurricane Sandy in New York. There were power lines everywhere. There were, it was awful for about a week. I lost water, and that really was one of the driving things that got me to think, you know what, I don't know how to deal with this kind of a situation. I wouldn't know what to do if I got lost in the woods. So there's good practical stuff in it, but I don't necessarily go in there to discuss politics or technocracy with the people there. And in addition to that, I think it's difficult striking a balance between trying to apprehend different emergency situations and then sort of being realistic about potential scenarios. Like, for instance, I still get invites to prepper events, to certain hikes and to certain things like that. But right now I'm at a point where it's like, if you go into this stuff and you don't really know what you're doing, it's easy to be like who I was at first, which is, if your time and resources are limited and you're like me and you're in a room crying surrounded by survival books, just like all over the place, right? Just kind of was just sort of freaking out and trying to go in the opposite direction and trying to just be like, okay, what do I need? I think it's hard to have a good place or a good idea of where to start, and also what is or isn't necessary, and to just go online and buy buckets and buckets of Alex Jones boner, because I don't know, maybe I need that. I don't know. So I guess I think the best case scenario would be, so what I'm trying to get at is, I kind of overextended myself and stressed myself out a little bit by constantly going on different hikes and trying to figure out what to do in a dangerous situation, when most likely, let's say, I might be stuck in my house, or I might be somewhere in between civilization and not. I might not necessarily always be in the woods, right?
Right.
So I think it's better in a way and less stressful to think of a prepper situation that's more relevant to your particular area than to try to just do everything. Because I was trying to do everything to overcompensate for the realization that I didn't know much. And I kind of stressed and overwhelmed myself, and then probably spent money I didn't need to on certain supplies. So I think everyone needs like some kind of prepper, guardian angel, or mentor that isn't crazy to take them under your wing and just say, no, here's the essentials. This kind of knife is good. You don't need to spend a ton of money on that. Maybe you know what to do in 3 situations. You don't have to know everything. So I guess it's trying to balance what's more relevant to your particular situation, if that makes sense.
Right. I'm always out in a truck, so whenever that S H's the F, I can't just make it right to my apocalypse van immediately. I could be anywhere. Yeah. So one thing I have to do is make contacts, because that's inevitably going to be your survival, is who you can fall in with along the way. And I might not ever see this stuff in my apocalypse van again. I could go out on a trip and not see anybody that I've ever seen before. Could go down there.
Yeah. So I'm not, I'm not discouraging people from joining a prepper group. I think, like I said, it's good to start somewhere. I guess ideally, hopefully the person running the group is mindful of new people and knows how to handle that, and is realistic about it. But for you, it might not be necessary to know how to build an A-frame tent in a shower or something at a truck stop. I mean, your scenario might look a little different, right?
Yeah.
You know, so nothing I did, let's say, prepared me for being stuck in my house during certain points of 2020 or not really having many places to go. I was not really prepared for that. You know?
So my personal answer, I'm just gonna give it away. I think that because we can see them attacking energy right now, that it's a bicycle. And that's one of the first things I'm going to look for if I'm out stranded somewhere and there's a fuel shortage and whatnot. Then I've ridden bikes all over the country and I'm way onto that. And yeah, I just don't think a lot of people are thinking bicycle, but it is, self-motivated, push yourself travel.
Also, what's the line between apocalyptic scenario and then just price of gas, right? Like what's
Right. Yeah. I mean, one could happen while the other doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, apocalypse scenario, fuel is going to get hoarded up in a second. And yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Something to consider, and also the off-grid thing is interesting too, and that's a pretty good point, especially if there's some kind of EMP attack. If there's some kind of grid attack, I know for a while in the news there was constantly like, oh, Russia's gonna attack the grid, Russia's gonna do this, that kind of scare stuff. So I do get what you were saying, and that kind of feeds back into our earlier conversation about people just connecting everything to a grid. That stuff drives me nutty. People saying, oh, I need, my Fitbit, I need all of smart appliances. Yeah, and especially when we know about the World Economic Forum having a desire to ration out energy, right? We see that coming down the pike, them saying, oh no, you threw down the N-word today, so therefore you don't get to have,
oh no, that's straight to prison.
Off.
Punching license plates in a second.
Yeah, something. So I don't know exactly where things are gonna go. I'm just saying that's not off the table.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, how would you get somebody that is really really sucked into this matrix stuff, that probably addicted to video games or porn or something worse? How would you convince them to get out into the world and just go see the things that are important?
Oh man, and that's tough too. And something I've been really thinking about that's been eating at me to answer part of that is sometimes I would rather be on my phone than engaging the people around me, especially after 2020, which is really awful. Something really insidious is it's a two-way street, right? So we can have phone addiction or digital addiction. I think that's real. But at the same time, I think deep down, people don't want to necessarily talk to each other, or they don't want to engage with the people around them. So essentially, for someone who's so stuck in that digital life, it's having to put them, you'd have to compete with that by creating events that they would rather be at, right? I think you just have to have something in your life that's so important to you that you'd rather be attending that.
Right.
I don't, yeah, for what you're saying, like, I don't think that kind of a person is a person that we could sit down and have a conversation with and show the pros and cons or rationalize with them as to why they should get off their device. I think it's the environment has to become better for them to even want to engage with it, because things are so, if if you're plugged into the news, you're plugged into that space, it's a bit of a feedback loop because it's so demoralizing and it shows you such a nightmare scenario that I think it's kind of like depression, where it makes it difficult to climb out. You
Yeah,
know,
that makes sense.
it makes it, yeah. And again, and that's the kind of thing where it's very easy to get sucked into. I mean, I'm at fault for this. Let's say I know I should be in bed around 10 o'clock or something. I know I need a full night's rest. But if I'm on my phone before I go to bed, 2 hours has gone by where I'm scrolling on my phone, and I've lost out on sleep, and then it affects my day. So it's something that just really creeps out on you, that it's like there has to be sort of this conscious concerted effort to try to do that. But if you're unconscious, that's a lot harder to do, because you have to have a level of self-awareness to understand your own habits and what you're addicted to, and what your rituals are to even engage with that. That's tough because I do know people like that who just prefer video games over real life, and in a sense I can't blame them. I'm not saying that that's good, but like I said, we have to create spaces. I mean, again, I'm thinking of that organized religion, that church. We have to create community spaces where people want to go out, where people want to engage, right? And there's so much low trust, I think, and that's part of the demoralization, that people would rather stay in their bubble. It's hard. It's really hard to fight that inertia to want to insulate in some kind of a bubble.
Yeah, this stuff has only really been this pervasive for less than 20 years. It's like the first 20 years of my life, technology was advancing like crazy. I mean, we went from Walkmans to a personal computer, and the next 20 years, we've got technology in everything. It's just like completely around us, and we're super dependent on it.
Yeah, it's crazy because it used to be, back in my parents' day, you had to fake a moon landing just to get away from people, and now you can stay in your house and never come out, and that's considered socially acceptable. Like, I don't, especially after 2020, especially after people, staying at home and working from home and this and that. So it just kind of goes further into the whole pods and bugs thing of trying to get people to just stay in their bubble.
Right. Yeah. That's where they want you. I mean, well, I know that you live in New York, right? And
Yeah.
And you're not going to be one of the smart city people. What do you have plans to move out into the real world?
How dare you? Listen, Eastern Standard Time is the adult time. I will have you know. Anything else is nonsense. So first, I do live in New York. Thankfully, I know people are going to cringe at this. I live in the suburbs. I'm not in Manhattan. So I am a little bit away from 100% smart city and the nonsense. So I don't have to work in the city. So I'm lucky in that regard. But I mean, yeah, I would be better off in more of a rural area. And everything has those cost benefits, right? If you're in a rural area and your only source of things is Walmart or Amazon, then that's a whole other thing to kind of deal with, right? Or if there's less of a support network, or these are just things that's relative, like my situation, at least I a big part of why I'm still in New York is because of family, and because of that family support structure, right? Because it's not just a matter of what area has the most liberty, it's where are you the most welcome and where do you have the most social credit. Because during tough times, those are generally the people who are most likely to help you out. Generally, it's not perfect, right? For me, I try to network with people who have land. I try to do things that put me in a position of like-minded people who also want to be a part of a community that doesn't follow this default trajectory, right? I think that's important, because I do think I don't want to go the route of being this rugged individualist in the woods. I'm not really Like, I like Kaczynski, but I don't know if I could do what he did. Right. So I think there's this tough balance to kind of strike of being around people and having a community, but having people that do share the same values and understanding of that technology as you do. I think that's super important, because I'm into Bitcoin, and I went to like a Bitcoin conference and all that stuff, and I'm happy that there's some overlap. There's some overlap, like I mentioned earlier, with prepper groups and in these circles when it comes to certain values and being, I guess, aware or mindful of what's going on. But not everyone in those spaces is on the same page necessarily. And not everyone is guaranteed to be like, against being on the grid. Like, I saw there was a cool, I forgot who gave the presentation, but there was someone talking about off-grid mining, and I thought that was kind of neat. Like, something like that is neat. Something like that's like a really good intersection of a lot of these different ideas.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm currently trying to figure out where I want to settle and, grow from my apocalypse van. So, but New York City is definitely going to become a smart city, and all of the major cities probably will be, and that's where they'll do the pods and bugs and such.
Yeah, also New York was pods and bugs before pods and bugs, when we saw people showcasing their $2,000 apartment that's yay square footage or something like that. Not Kanye square footage, just general. But of course, obviously it goes without saying, it's just easier to surveillance a city. I know that New York recently, the governor put in cameras in the subways. They talked about installing more police, more things like that. So of course they're conditioning the people to just accept this, right? And it's just easier to pull that off. But not only that, but every politician in New York has always had that approach of saying, we want New York to be first and right at the forefront of all this technology and all this great stuff. So yeah, of course. And as I was saying earlier, the reason I'm in New York is because of support and family. Although this place would be awesome if it wasn't for the crazy, global homo stuff. It would be so great because it's really pretty in the fall. That's what it's got going for it. New York is actually really big, and upstate is kind of a different story. The suburbs are a different story. Not everything is New York City, of course.
Right, above 80, you're usually pretty good, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's an awesome place,
Yeah, I totally understand that. I think that everyone's got to figure out with what they're working with, for sure. And yeah, I mean, so when we're completely surrounded by all this stuff, and we're a group of weirdos that are remembering how to be human. We're remembering how to grow and hunt and all these other fun things that most of us have never had to do. And inevitably we will end up touching grass, but also we need to kind of realize what got us here, and what, like, and you were talking about Ted before, and he was just the prophet of our times. It's like, I guess his MK Ultra programming plus his ridiculous amount of genius just kind of got him to just see the future as it laid out,
that perfect chemical combination of genius and poking around where we don't belong. And yeah, right. Absolutely. Well, look, man, I mean, truth is what it is, regardless of who it comes from, right? Whether it's Bill Cooper, whether it's some CIA agent or whatever it is, right? I kind of take into consideration the source, but at the same time, I don't discount it just because of that, and right. Trying to navigate these things. No, I hear you. I mean, on one hand, all this stuff is so crazy and it's Brave New World, no doubt. On the other hand, I mean, look, I would rather live in America and I'd rather live in these times than a lot of other places. And then plus, we don't, every generation is kind of tasked with getting through something, whether that something is pre-planned or not. Unfortunately, we just had COVID nonsense, which isn't as cool as something else. But it is what it is, right? And I'm sure there's like future, nonsense to come, right?
Yeah, I'll take the New World Order surveilling and controlling everybody over getting shot at. I really just don't think.
But this one's creepy. Like, this one isn't just about controlling people. It's like about like touching you weird too. I don't know. It's weird, right? When we have, Joe Biden, who's like a half dead clone pedophile. It's like his clone is also a pedophile too. There's like something to that. And you just kind of think about it. And it's like, it's not enough for it to be controlling and just someone kind of like, doing the hand rub and laughing. It's weird. Like, it's creepy. It's like a furry. I mean, it's just like, ugh. It gives you weird, it's just like, do you have to go the kids trans route? Do we have to do that? Like, why can't we just have people who want to like conquer and they're like, let's take the women and children like normal? I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying this route's fucking weird. This timeline's weird.
Those kind of things had been going on in other times. It's just that one thing we're going to notice a little easier from the internet. A lot of things you just can't hide from that. The other thing is, I think that they're so brazen. Like, they don't care anymore if we know. We know they are satanic pedophiles that drink blood and do terrible things to kids, and it's like they're like, so what, exposing them really doesn't do that much anymore, and a lot of people will still even deny whenever they can say it out loud. You can see people spirit cooking, and there it's like you can see Podesta's artwork. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, dude, because that like satanic egoic satanic temple sort of religion, that secularism is the default, right? That's sort of like the default religion, whether people talk about it or not. My dumb ass got into a debate with someone who said, oh man, it would be so great if we could just have everything in just society be this hyper rational, material, atheist, kind of like super scientific thing going on. I'm like, we have that now. I'm not saying the people, the elites, are pushing actual science. I am saying we have this amoral secular system now, and it's not working. It's not good, right? If you aim for strictly utilitarian combined with like strictly material, you end up in a weird place, right? Rhymes with Weimar Republic, and that's pretty much what we have now. It's like, and of course, like, elites don't necessarily believe in the nonsense that they're pushing. They're just pushing it as a tactic of war, right? That's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, so you mentioned Bill Cooper before, silent weapons for quiet wars.
Yeah, dude, it's like the problem isn't just people lacking rationality, although that's part of it. The problem is really that definition of morality being changed, right? And it's sort of this weird twisting of libertarian values that's been kind of inverted, where they're always like, oh, we need trans kids so they can have freedom of expression and freedom of this and liberty to do this, and we need them to have freedom from their parents. And it's just like a weird twisted monkey. It's like we all wished on a monkey's paw and got this twisted version of things we're going for. So I do have a question for you, which is,
oh, awesome.
Yeah, now it's my turn to podcast.
Go for it.
Yeah, how do you, I'm just curious, right? Because I get a lot thrown at me. I call myself a realist, but I get so much shit thrown at me saying you're black pilled, you're this. how do you stay not only optimistic, but what are some things that really get you through, right? Because everyone knows about this demoralization stuff in general, but like, what are some things that really keep you going?
Well, I read the spoilers, and in the spoilers, God wins in the end. So there's that. That's
no, don't do that. I hate that. I'm not saying I hate God winning. That drives me crazy when people do that, because people are just, I'm not to God shame, but it's more like people just do that. Well, don't worry, God wins it. I'm like, well, what about us though? But we're still
we're
here.
Screwed.
He gets to live in outer space. We're stuck here. Like, I gotta fucking be stuck with these assholes. I mean, no, because that's one of those reminds me of everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like, but how does that help us now? What does that look? Okay, what does God winning look like? Right? What does that look like?
Oh, it even in the book, it looks real bad before it gets good. So there's that.
What is that good? Look, okay, I'll give you this. And I'm sure I would change. I'll say I never said this, something like that, but like, I have moments where I go, you know what? Asteroid. Like, I get it. I'm not saying I want that to truly personally happen. Like, my boyfriend Jason, his mom's fantastic, right? She's like a superstitious Italian lady, and I love her. And she always says to me, we talk about these things, and she goes, well, don't worry, if things get really, really bad with Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum, the earth will just swallow everybody up. Mother Nature will just clear it all out. I'm like, wait, what about us? And she just goes,
exactly.
We had a good run, we got it.
Before I go, I'm gonna let you do promote anything that you want to promote, or say anything else. I'm getting yelled at by the shipper, so I got to pick up my bills. But thank you so much for joining me, and go ahead and say what you want to say. I have to go to the door though.
Awesome. I would say, look, just real fast, you don't need to spend $1 million doing ayahuasca with a sketchy shaman you found on the internet, to do some deep dive. Just stop hating your parents, do some self-reflection. I would say, it's not all doom and gloom. Try to lean into your local community where you're at. If you don't see something you want, whether it's a community center, just take the initiative and do something yourself. Sometimes, rather than preach to people or try to wake people up, if you build something awesome, people will get curious and want to know more about it. If you have signs of success, right? If you can show people that what you're doing is working, or that it's elevating you in some way, and people notice that you're not being demoralized, that you've got a lot of positivity and charisma going on, they'll be drawn to that. And I think that's just something that really kind of uplifts everyone around you. So I think it's easy to focus on those things. Don't get caught up in the minutia of trying to figure it all out. Don't get caught up in trying to decode the news constantly, or what are they up to. I know it's hard to strike that balance between wanting to have an awareness of what's going on, but also not get so distracted by it. So I would say, just for sure, hang in there, take that initiative, and be the kind of hero that you want to see, basically. I don't know if Andy left for a pack of cigarettes and then isn't coming back, or maybe he is. Maybe he tried to use a fake 20. I don't know the situation, right? I don't know. I think that's pretty much, that probably has to be the worst case scenario. It's like bad enough to leave for cigarettes, but then leaving for cigarettes and then trying to use the fake 20, and like, that's probably definitely a guarantee that someone's like not coming back, like, for sure. There you go.